Hey guys! So in this video we are going to talk about the highest paid programming languages and reason a little bit about that. So let's get into it. Now this is going to be, I think, the final video. I think so. I've been boring you with these past videos. I don't know how many I've made now, but these videos about Stack Overflow's well, their 2018 poll basically of different things in the programming world. And if you haven't watched the other videos about these things, it's basically just they interviewed 100,000 developers about different things in programming. And basically one of the most interesting surveys that they made, at least what I thought, was how well paid, like what are the most well paid programming languages. And at the top of that was F#, followed by things such as Groovy and Scala and Clojure, I think. Yeah, and then there were regional things as well, where you could, for example, get a lot of money if you were, say, in India and you knew Haskell. And what's interesting about this is that I've had quite a few subscribers talk to me about different programming languages, and I'm one of those people who I keep telling people that there are programming languages that are very popular, and then there are programming languages that are not so popular, and there's always a reason as to why that is. And that there are things such as, like, I'm one of those people who will tell you that if you are like truly passionate, like, you shouldn't, as a beginner, you should not learn Haskell, because like it's such an obscure and very different way of programming that it's most likely just going to mess you up. And when this poll then comes out, or basically the survey comes out and proves that some of the highest paid people in programming are working in these languages, you might ask yourself, why is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me give you my 2 cents on the matter. You see, by just looking at those numbers, that tells me something, but it also gives, I have to give you some context in order to make that make sense to you, because I already know this. But what's even nicer is that I could actually find the same type of evidence when I looked at another series of statistics that they presented from Stack Overflow. And the other was the popularity of languages. Now, the popularity of languages, or the most commonly used languages in programming, are JavaScript and Java. No surprise there. But the least popular languages, so we're on the low end of the scale, were virtually the same languages that were associated with the highest amount of money. And if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense. Take F#. Now F# is not even on, it's not even on like a competitor for the most popular programming language, but it is associated with the highest salaries in the world, globally. And if you just think about that, that is actually very, very logical, at least in my opinion, because if you have people, if you have as a company standardized on something like F#, for example, and no one cares about that language, you have no way of getting people, experienced people, because nobody's studying the language, nobody's learning the language. That means that the few people who actually invest the time to learn this are going to be immensely expensive. This is why I argue that, or rather this is what I argue, that this is the true battle for the corporations who are behind some of these programming languages, such as, say, Java or Oracle in this scenario, where like that's what their business is about, guys. Their business is to keep their language relevant enough so that companies use it and companies are willing to invest in that platform, because it's a two-way, it's a kind of, they have two types of people they have to cater to. They have to make sure that they can monetize the fact that companies are using their technology, but they also have to make sure that programmers are interested in using the technology, because they need to have that balance. I mean, because if nobody knows the language, it's not going to be adopted by new companies. That's what happened to COBOL, for example. And it's the same deal, in my opinion, or from my perspective, with F# and these other languages, because this is exactly why I keep telling people it's so important to not give in to this emotional desire just because you like, say, take Haskell for example. If you give in to your own desires as a engineer and you allow yourself to indulge your own passion for the craft, instead of thinking about what's best for the company, you get into this problem. Because don't shit yourself. Nothing Haskell or F# is doing. I can't even conceive of anything that is. Maybe there is a really good reason why companies would use these languages. But I don't think so. I think that, or rather, don't get me wrong. These are great languages, but at the end of the day, there's nothing that you can do the things that these languages do in any programming language. Almost every language can do what every other language does. And if you then think about how much it costs for the company to recruit people for, say, F# and how much the salaries are, it's actually a bad investment for the company to standardize on F#. This is why I argue so many companies standardize on Java, because I mean the scarcity of people that know programming is immense. But the amount of, if you are standardizing a company on a platform, you can't just consider the language itself, because it would be stupid. Let's take a really large organization. Say here in Gothenburg we have Volvo. Now Volvo standardizes on Java, which is an extremely popular choice for a lot of big companies. And the reason why that is because there are so many people who know it. You can get people into the workforce. And that means that you can actually have, your salaries are going to be sane, or the cost of recruiting people is going to be sane because there is people to choose from. But that's not the case for F#. If your company has standardized on F#, you're in a bit of a bind because there are no people. That means that the average cost per developer goes up by quite a lot. So if you think about that, guys, that means that if you specialize in these really obscure, niched languages, or very small or like low adoption languages, you can make the most amount of money, in theory. But that's also a risk, because I'm pretty sure that the numbers that they were showing, they were immense. The money they were making was immense in these languages. But that also, I'm just guessing here. It's not like those salaries are associated with like juniors or people who took a 2-month boot camp type of thing. This is probably like that number is probably based on more senior profiles who've been in the industry for quite a while. But I think it illustrates a very good point, both for us as developers, because as for us, it basically means that there are languages out there that are associated with more money than other languages. So if you're a business type of minded person, that's something you can consider. And it also is interesting to think about it from the company's perspective, because that also means that the language that you standardize on is going to actually affect your business long term. And this is why I keep telling, especially to juniors and so forth, and also to companies, the choice of language that you make, it is more important than you can possibly imagine. It is actually one of the most important decisions that you can make, because if you pick a really niched language with a lot of really cool technical aspects, but nobody's using it, that affects your ability to move as an organization. It affects how fast you can recruit people, or how much money you have to pay them, or how many people you have to train. So, and this is exactly why I keep telling people that you don't like telling people that, oh no, Java is a bad choice because it's so slow and so forth. It's not a valid argument, because if you only consider the speed you're thinking about this amount of like this. You're not thinking it through. Great if for this F# developer who's getting paid that massive salary and being in such a lucrative position where the F# developer can get so much money for it, but for the company it's really shitty, a really bad situation. It's really bad, because trust me, I find it very hard to believe that these extremely low adoption languages have some type of genius programmer, or like that these numbers are coming from people who are like geniuses in their field. From my perspective, it has to do with what most likely happened was the company made a really bad technical decision for the company. They standardized on something like F# or something like that, and for whatever reason somebody decided to use that instead of something more mainstream, and now the company is stuck in a situation where it's too expensive to migrate their code base from F# to something more mainstream, and now they basically have to scour the globe to find people who have senior level knowledge in this programming language, and they have to pay them a lot more for doing something that they could have gotten much cheaper if they went with a more mainstream language. So that's what I took away from this little survey. So to summarize, if you want to make the absolute most amount of money when you're a experienced developer, pick F# or one of the more unadopted, low adoption languages. And if you want to be extremely, because it's high risk. I mean, if you think about it, yeah, all right, so they have almost nobody doing it. That means that the amount of jobs are probably not that, like there's fewer jobs, but you get paid more, versus, all right, you get a lower salary, but you're in higher demand. So that's a way-off you have to make. But at least I thought it was very interesting. I really do. Low adoption rate or scarcity means more money for you as a developer. Yeah, that's what we're going to end on. Have a great day.